Okay, welcome everyone. Let's just see if we can get everything working here before we kick things off. I've had a few audio troubles with Greg, one of the guests, so we'll just see. But welcome, Brian. Welcome, Jack.
Hey, Sam. Good to be here.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So, okay, so we'll kick off, and I know Greg's trying to work out his audio, and we've got Mudis here who might come along as well as part of the team. Now, this is going to be a really interesting session. I think I actually remember creating a video about your submission around this COVID challenge. And I thought that, the dashboard that I saw, the report that I saw was one of the best reports I think I've ever seen inside of Power BI. Just the way that the story was told inside of Power BI was so compelling. And it really showcased the variety of features that you have available to you within Power BI. So I guess, first of all, really well done on a super submission. But today is, all about just understanding how you went about it, how you, as a group, because I know this was a collaboration between a few of you, as a group, how you actually worked through the challenge and the scenario, and then also how you decided on the navigation, decided on what visualizations to showcase, how to craft the story as a group. So yeah, it'd be really good to go into that. What I'll do before we go any further is just introduce the others. Hopefully we can get some audio going here. But we've got Greg on the line, and we've got Mudis here as well. So welcome.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, there he is.
Hey, guys.
Cool. So Greg, I think, is still unfortunately having issues with your audio. I don't know what is going on there. But welcome in, Mudis here. We've got a full house. So there's many ways this can go. Maybe if we just kickstart by saying how did you decide to actually do a collaboration here? Because everyone historically has been off doing the challenges by themselves, and I think the fact that you decided to actually create a team and attack the challenge as a team is quite interesting. So how and why did you go down this route?
Well, I think one of the things we're doing is we were kicking around content ideas at the end of last calendar year, the beginning of this year. And we originally started out thinking about Analyst Hub and creative ways we could use Analyst Hub and demonstrate how you can use that to plan your Power BI development. And we thought, what better way, rather than just doing a video on that or talking about it, than to actually get in and do a big development project together and see how it worked in terms of, planning. And so at the point at which we undertook this challenge, the Teams feature in Analyst Hub wasn't fully implemented. So we kind of treated Data Challenge 11 as a dry run and kind of got our general team dynamic working and, the kind of collaborative process that we wanted to implement. And then it was kind of a second part where we kind of looked at Data Challenge 12 that we're currently in order to merge the Analyst Hub capability into that general collaborative process. So that, from my perspective, that's kind of how the genesis of the idea started.
Nice one. Anyone else want to add to that? Like, how did you come together as a team? Like, who decided? Okay, let's all of us get together.
Well, I think that Brian was the one who got all, the four of us all together and organized this whole thing. So props to Brian for organizing this. But I think he picked a good mix of people for this, just because of our different different mindsets and approaches on how we tackle things. So it was definitely very interesting to see how each of us co-mingled, if you want to say.
Yeah, nice. So just to give a bit of background, this particular report, I'm just going to bring up my screen so we can give everyone a bit of a taste around what we're really going to cover today. Just give me a second. Cool. So we're covering this particular report here. Now, this was part of Challenge 12. It was about worldwide COVID data, right? Like how every country is performing over time regarding COVID at the point in time we grabbed the data. Now, I think that, yeah, we're going to go into this in a little bit deeper, right? And I think it'd be good to especially go into a lot of the visualizations that you went into. But in terms of visually, I mean, very quickly, you can see that this is a compelling story, and the way that you built in a lot of the tooltips and, just a lot of these like really small features, navigation features up the top and around the side, the background that you created. It's just an immersive reporting experience. And storytelling experience. So, that's what to me makes it so compelling. It looks really nice, but also tells a really quality story, a really intuitive story. Now, let's first dive into, how did you attack the challenge as a collaboration? So how did you, because things can get pretty messy pretty quickly, I would have thought. And this is really relevant in my view, especially for business, like within organizations, right? Because not all the time you're off by yourself doing this. You need to somehow collaborate together as a business function, as an organization. Maybe you've got your own internal center of excellence, digital center of excellence. So how do you go about collaborating on reports inside of Power BI? And you guys can use your experience with this as a way to talk us through what you deem as best practice.
Let's jump in on this one.
Who wants to jump in?
I will if there's any audio.
Well,
sorry, Greg.
I think we're having a hard time hearing Greg.
We can't hear you. Do you want to go, Brian?
So I'll jump in on this one. That I think the first thing we did is we kind of did an assessment of the strengths of the team, and this is just overall just a really strong team, top to bottom, and we've got, I think everybody on the team had been a past winner of a previous challenge. And so, but I think we did an honest assessment of, kind of where we could best utilize people's skills. And so, at the time, Jared was really heavily immersed in a big client project. And so he was kind of in an oversight role. I think, we certainly would have been able to utilize a lot of the strengths that he brought, but his time was limited. So really, Munasir took, I would say, a major lead on kind of the overall look of the report. Certainly, I think his kind of artistic creative skills are just off the chart, and so we wanted to take advantage of that. And the look, the immersive look, Sam, that you mentioned, the background, the kind of dramatic dark theme that was used, that was really his lead on this. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing a question. Are folks having trouble hearing audio?
I'm hearing things very well.
And so he took a big lead on that. Greg really is kind of a master craftsman in the report, and so a lot of the kind of overall organization of the elements, the tooltips, the navigation, a lot of that was Greg's handiwork on this. I jumped in originally on the data modeling. I think partially because I felt the strongest about the lack of workability in the way the data was currently structured, in terms of the odd way that Hopkins was using the cumulative numbers rather than the marginal daily numbers. and that just kind of broke my brain, and I couldn't work in that. So I took the lead on fixing that, and then also on the statistical side. So that's kind of how we divvied things up. We didn't have, I would say, a formal project manager the way I think we might on subsequent efforts, but that was kind of the primary division of labor. I would leave it to Jared and Mudasir. I think we're having a tough time with Greg's audio, but to add to that.
Can I just, so I'll just jump in just so we can focus in on a couple of things there. So it seems like you decided to divide up. So I think that's a strategy to think about in itself, to divide up who actually looked after certain aspects of the report so that everyone wasn't sort of jumping over each other as you were working through it. So some might have a better idea about data transformations, data modeling, visualizations, so on and so forth. So if you decide beforehand, before you jump into it, who's the best at what, you can actually speed up your development, I presume, because everyone can jump in and just focus on what they are best at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I know my time was limited in what I could actually do for this, but what I kind of experienced with this right here is, a topic would come up in the chat that we were talking about a certain thing, and then somebody would just take the lead, and then the others would just let that person run with it. And if that person had any kind of issues or any kind of wanted any thoughts from the others, they just chimed in. But for the most part, it was pretty much somebody just took the lead on something and then went with it, and then they decided as a group if that's what they'd like or if they wanted to make any changes. So that was I'm sure it was definitely hard for these guys, especially since normally I'm sure they don't work in a team environment where they're doing all this, especially when you're doing these challenge entries. You're usually doing it by yourself, so it's you asking yourself a question instead of three other guys that are just as proficient as you are in development of Power BI. So it was pretty good to see how well everybody got along, and even with the different approaches and everything, that these guys did a great job of taking it and just running with it. And there really wasn't, like Brian said, there wasn't as much organization as there probably will be moving forward, but definitely it was. There weren't as many struggles as I thought there would be.
So question on that. So what sort of like workflow did you have? Because collaborative work in Power BI, I don't think is super easy. It's almost like we need to, like, and maybe you guys are discovering this, we need to formulate our own sort of like DevOps or analytics ops for Power BI. So how did you go about starting off? Like, who sort of worked on things first, and then how did you organize version control so that people weren't copying over what others were doing inside of the Power BI reports? I think that would be something that would be useful to go into, and maybe someone can share their screen and maybe talk through like what tools you use for collaboration, what tools you use for version control. I think those specifics would be really valuable.
Yeah, version control is one of the biggest challenges because, unlike a lot of other environments, there's no way to code merge your development into each other. It's really got to be, with one exception, we found out it's really got to be a sequential process. Yep. And so, it really is a check-in, check-out system. And we didn't have software tools this time to do that. We really just used kind of a business practice. So we would basically we were using it on SharePoint, and we would take and move the folder, move the file. When you took the file from the active directory into a previous directory, and then you would copy the file down for your use. You'd send a message on Skype saying, I've got control of the file. And it's not a great way to do it by any stretch.
Right.
Because there was always that fear that somebody had taken the file and not popped it into the prior folder, or that somebody had it and you weren't aware of it from the Skype chat. And so we've subsequently kind of kludged together a little bit better system for challenge 12. The thing we were really hopeful about was Power BI Tips has a specific software they just released a couple of weeks ago for Power BI version control that is a formal check-in, check-out system. And it looks super promising. It's obviously geared directly to Power BI. Greg and I tried for days to get it to work. We couldn't get it installed and working properly. So we've kludged together a Power BI report that we use our check-in, check-out process that we can show you. But that was a major challenge on this one, the sequential nature of it. Yeah. And the one exception where you can work in tandem is if you've got somebody doing the DAX. So, for example, one of us will be working on either, some data modeling aspects, or once the data modeling was done, Greg would be working on, some of the navigation and tooltips. And there were a couple of times when I think Mudasir grabbed the file, worked in Tabular Editor, and then merged his DAX into the file when it came back. And that's the one example where you can work effectively concurrently, but everything else has to be sequential. And so, Jarrett's point about, the collaborative nature of it, it has huge pluses in terms of being able to leverage the strengths of the individual team members. From an efficiency standpoint, it'll definitely take you longer. I think the serial nature of it just has an inefficiency that you don't come across when you're working on your own. But I think each of us would tell you that I think it was the best development experience I've ever had. And I think it's the best report I've ever been involved with, just because of the strengths and the diversity of thought that was brought to the project that when you're working by yourself, you just don't get. So I would say it's well worth it, but you've got to plan for additional time because it is inherently kind of inefficient the way Power BI works.
Yeah, you bring up some really good points there. And I've just brought up the Analyst Hub because there's something I want to showcase here, because we've actually really tried to develop things based on your experiences. And where, you mentioned that there are some inefficiencies working as in collaboration with others around Power BI. And with the Analyst Hub, we're trying to reduce or minimize those inefficiencies as much as possible. And I know that a lot of this functionality wasn't even available when you created this report, but there is a lot more now. And I just want to quickly go into that, and maybe you guys can talk to how this will actually help for future ones that you plan to do. So, the first thing is that we actually have this Teams functionality where you can actually create a specific team dedicated to your own projects or your own group of projects, right? So I don't even know, this is so new that I don't even think this was available when you started out, right? And so you could create your JMAP team in here, and then all of your documents that you create from your apps could now be saved in your specific team. And also within Teams, so if I just jump into, this is some of our own internal ones at Enterprise DNA, we have projects. And so you could have had a COVID-19 project inside of your team. And then all of the specific documents and planners and code could be saved to that specific project within your team. So here I'm now in my team. I'm in my Enterprise DNA devs team. I can jump to my projects, and you see here that I have a whole range of different projects. And so again, this is quite new functionality. And then when you actually dive into specific projects here, you can, so I dive into, what's one that's got quite a bit? So I'll dive into this one. So you'll see that I've got a couple of documents in that specific project. And this is the functionality that I've always dreamt about for the Analyst Hub, but now we've actually implemented it finally, a way to start high level with your group. And so think about this, how this relates to an organization as well. within your organization, you might have a range of different teams. Within those teams, you might have a range of different projects. And to me, that is equally related to what you guys were trying to achieve also within the challenge. Then, within here, you have all of the documents that you can need to plan things out. So you have a planner tool that you can work collaboratively in. So, this will enable you to, I guess, come up with all your ideas, but put it into one document that is centralized to your team. Did you have an opportunity to do that at all, or did you just bypass Analyst Hub completely because the team's functionality wasn't there at the time?
We bypassed it for that one, but we're using it heavily for Challenge 12.
Cool. And just the fact, and so we've got some, the planner tools where you can plan out like using. I'll actually jump into one of my projects that we can have a look at. So this is a project that I recently started, and so we have our planner tool, our planner document here. We've got a color theme here, and here's just some imagery, some ideas that I've put in this specific project. And so you can collate all of your ideas using a range of these different apps, and then you could even take it as far as collating all of the formula you want to use, the M code you want to use. Maybe you're using some R or some Python code. These are a way to save those. And then also we have, what else we got here? A data model planner. This is a brand new app, so you can actually plan out your data model and your data pipelines as well. So bringing all these together, one of the things that you've mentioned that we still have to do is some sort of check-in and check-out functionality. Because I think if we could have that in the Analyst Hub as well, I think that's going to add a huge amount of additional value. Just having some sort of notification system where you can sort of see, okay, this person's working on it now, and versus someone else. And I think if we can streamline that, that's going to cut down a lot of inefficiencies from what you've mentioned in your experiences doing this collaboratively.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, I'm really interested to get more of your feedback when you use this more heavily in a follow-up one. But I think we have added a lot of new functionality now that I think will make a big difference to collaborative work. Do we want to get back to? Is there anything else we want to maybe quickly discuss around how you collaboratively went about this before we can maybe dive into some of the specifics about the report? Because I think that a lot of those on the call will want to learn how you actually developed it, like how you actually went about the design, and I'm sure Mudasir has a lot to say about that.
Yeah. So firstly, what I would say that collaborative development really saved a lot of time, which I would have spent if I was developing the report by myself only. So, and the other benefit what I found was like when you're working in a team environment, for example, if you do something wrong in your report, right? So the other team member can correct you. So this thing is missing because most of the team members are the sole developers in their organization. So this one I found really helpful when I collaborated in this project. And thirdly, I got to learn many things from other team members, from the strengths and weaknesses of other team members, and other team members learn from each other as well. So I think that it was a really, really good experience. So I basically dived in because I didn't have much time. So Brian told me about it. So I told him, okay, I'm ready to jump into it. And honestly speaking, I didn't spend much time in creating that report. Otherwise, I would be spending a hell lot of time to create this type of report.
Right. And so you obviously are the visualization guru, Mudasir. So how did you like creatively, how did you go about working out what you wanted to place in the report page, or just like what the story was that you wanted to tell with the data?
Okay, so if other team members remember, so we were on the very initial stage of the report development. Brian was working on setting up the data set and setting up the relationship models and everything. So we had a meeting. We already discussed what we were trying to achieve with the report. So we exchanged some templates back and forth in Skype, and we decided on something. So firstly, it was because of Brian that we had to be creative, because Brian told me that he would be including the map in the report, and then he told us that I would be needing another section in my report too. So basically, so he occupied most of the analysis in the report.
So what Brian said goes.
Yeah. So
Brian basically gave you some constraints, and then with that you thought, okay, well, we want to use the map, we want to show this visualization. Okay, let's have it think about how we can be creative around that.
Yeah, exactly. And
I have a different perception of it.
And the most difficult task when using like maps in Power BI is to integrate it well with the background. So it's really difficult. So what I did was, I just had an idea. What I did was, I took the screenshot of this a map of Mapbox, and then I placed it in the background of the Power BI report. That's it. And there are many things I did to get this type of background. So if you can give me the screen share, then I can show you.
So you just have to share your screen first.
Oh, okay.
And then I can switch over to it.
But I think I'll chime in while he's doing that real quick. There is, I think it's very important in this type of collaborative environment, is before you get into doing anything, that you have to decide, what kind of story are you going to tell, and kind of clean the data before you move forward. And that's what I learned huge from like Mudasir and Brian and Greg in the development of this, is like, okay, before you get going with this, you got to make sure the data is clean. And then we got to figure out what kind of story are we going to tell with the data. So I think that's something huge that you need to take into effect if you're going to be doing a collaborative effort as well.
And how did you come to that, like the conclusion of what story you wanted to tell? So you clean the data, and then what did you do within Power BI, or just from a discovery point of view to land on, okay, this is the story? What do you think were some of the key things that went into that, and also how did you do that collaboratively?
First, what we had was like just the map in the report, and Brian was working on the other analysis at the right hand side. So we just discussed that we should have one story in the report, because if the report is not telling any type of story, then I think it's not engaging to the audience. It's not engaging to the people who are browsing through the report. So we came up with the idea. So it's about COVID. So how about we show how have many different countries dealt with this virus, right? And it really went along with the type of analysis we were trying to show, as Brian showed some type of analysis as what different types of countries are doing, some predictive analysis also. And then we were also thinking about how we can show like different types of cases, like confirmed cases, recovered, and deaths. First, we thought maybe we should show it in the slicer, right? But when you show it in the slicer, you cannot see the whole picture at once, right? So you have to go in the slicer and have to select different metrics. So what my idea is, whenever I try to create the report, I try to keep as minimum slicers as possible in the report. Right. Because I try to include visuals in the report, because with the visuals you can slice other visuals also. So, and for the slicer, what I think is to have main slicers only in the report, like period slicer if you want to browse the report periodically. And then we were just discussing in the chat, like we were saying, like if the COVID cases have been reported correctly or not. So Brian told me that like in autumn or winter season in Canada, US, and other countries had high number of cases. So this gave me idea to include the seasons also in the report, because when we had the first wave, so the different governments were already talking about the second wave. So I thought it would be good to have to analyze the report by different seasons also. And if you go into season, you can see that some countries were performing very good in summer countries, and some countries performed very poorly in winter seasons. And mainly because in winter season, in colder countries, many activities are indoors rather than outdoors. So it created a lot of cases in those types of countries.
Nice. So you were able to sort of figure that insight out with just a little bit of trial and error. And then once you had that in your mind, you're like, okay, well, how can we make this visually compelling? So I like that sort of trial and error approach where you don't just jump straight into this fancy visualization or this amazing visualization. You sort of think, okay, well, yep. So we've got some trends within the data. The trend is seasonal. So how can we showcase that seasonal information effectively? And you could have gone many ways there, and that's the decision that you decided to go, and then that was what the story was that you decided to tell. So I like how you got to that just over time by discussing what was the key insight. So I think you don't always come up with the story right from the beginning, right? Sometimes it just takes a bit of iteration until you actually get there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a hard thing to get to sometimes, because I think you kind of, at least I have this tendency to fall in love with my own analyses. And so I spent 3 days on an analysis that ended up on the cutting room floor that it didn't, I think it was an interesting analysis. It was kind of how honestly do we think countries are reporting, but it didn't really fit the story. And it would have been, taking up space that really would have taken away from other things that we felt were really critical to that story. And so it was hard to let go, because it was a lot of work and it was interesting. But I think, in listening to, Greg's write-ups sometimes and Alex's write-ups, they talk about things that they kind of roads they go down that end up being dead ends or end up on the cutting room floor that maybe get used in a future challenge, but that you've got to be willing to let go of if they don't really mesh with the story. And the other thing I would say is, one of the things that I think worked really well from a team dynamic standpoint was there was just a tremendous amount of trust among this team that if somebody felt strongly about something, everybody else was willing to step back and go with it. And I'll give you just a brief story. It's a trivial thing, but it was funny how it played out. That on that bottom chart, the area chart, that one. I talked to Mudasir and I said, "Don't we need a legend on that? Don't we need some more clarity?" And he's like, "Nope." He said, "That is an intuitive chart. People are going to know what that means." And I was like, "Okay." He's the visual master. I'm just going to defer to that. And the interesting thing is when we watched your video, Sam, when you were critiquing this, one of the first things you said is, this is just an intuitive chart. It doesn't need a legend or any other markings. And we'd never told that story. We'd never talked to you about that. And it was something you picked up, and it was just a good example of, just kind of trusting the person who knows and the person who has a strong opinion about things. And I think there were things in this report that all four of us at different points felt really strongly about, and the others were really willing to defer to that. And I think because of that, I think we ended up with kind of the best of the collective brain of the group.
Yeah, I definitely felt that, because really this particular chart, when you look at it in combination with everything else, it's really just trying to showcase the trend, right? So does the individual data actually matter? Like, you can get there in the end with the tooltip, but from a visual perspective, you're just trying to, as you're clicking through different countries, you're just trying to identify the overall trend here. So the sort of the micro data doesn't matter as much, because you can get it in a different way. So visually, I think that was the right decision. One of the other things that I like here is that, yes, you decided on the story you wanted to tell, but the other thing is that you creatively figured out how to get to that story as you click through different visualizations. And what I really like is the number of ways that you can break down the data. So like here on the side, you can really quickly get to say the like continent or the region, the global region. So that was one filter that I think was a really good one to have, so that people could because sometimes you might want to look at US, but sometimes you might want to look at the North American region. Then you can very quickly dive into a specific region by hovering over the chart and getting the tooltip. You can also drill into a specific country by clicking over in this visualization here. So I really like the way that you thought out how to be able to dive into any number of stories by the way that you positioned your visualizations, or you represented your visualizations that users can click on to dive into more, like a different story about a different area of the globe. Any insights into how you came about positioning those things, or how you built that into your narrative around the report?
I saw some inspiration on the internet, so I took some inspiration from that report also, especially the chart at the bottom, you can see. So it looked pretty good, but it was a column chart, the report I saw. But when I tried a column chart in here, it didn't look very good and it didn't make any sense. So, but in this chart, you can see that recovered and death cases are the subsets of confirmed cases, right? So you can clearly see that confirmed cases is the total, and then recovered cases, and then deaths. And this was the main page of the report. So if you are on the confirmed cases, you can see 3 different cases on the bottom chart. But if you click on recovered cases, you will see only one. Means you can only see recovered cases, because confirmed cases contains recovered and death cases also. That's why we showed 3 cases on the bottom chart of the report. And another trick we used is, if you see the static tooltip on the map.
So how do I click back? Yeah. So this is I really like this as well. So you also broke down your story and you said, okay, well, users will want to dive into specific metrics, confirmed, recovered deaths. And so instead of like having some slicer, you decided to have the ability to dive into that by clicking on the number, right? Or clicking on the result, which was quite good. Now, interestingly, how did you do this? Like, let's dive into that. Like, how do you actually enable someone to click on something? So like if I click to view cases by death. If I click on this, like how do you actually do that?
I use the button on top of this card and stacked area chart. And if you use button, if you hover over this, you can see that you are getting the same type of background. If you hover over on recovered cases or confirmed cases, you can see that you are getting the same type of background, right? So I went into the button fill section, and I selected the background, the same background as I'm using in the report. So it would feel like that it's not something else we are using on the report, or it feels something awkward, right? And if you click on this visual header tooltip, this was pretty interesting on the map. So Brian told me that we need some legend, because it doesn't tell the user what darker color means or light color means on the report, right? So if you see this tooltip.
Sorry, it's just running a bit slow.
So I created this gradient line chart. I created from the charticulator. So it clearly shows that the higher the cases goes up, the darker the color goes, right? So you don't have to specify specifically on the report.
Sorry, it disappeared. But that's amazing. So this was a tooltip that you created in a different page, but you fed through into this visualization to try to showcase how to showcase a legend in a more creative way.
And we use the story that how have countries performed after the first 1,000 cases. Many countries started taking actions after the cases reached to a certain level. So that's why we showed that we show that the performance of the countries after the cases touched a particular number.
Yeah. It's amazing how much information you have got into this report by using tooltips effectively. Like, I mean, this report could easily be 5 to 10 pages long, but by effectively using tooltips, you're able to bring so much information together into just the one seamless page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish we had Greg's audio, because the tooltip, I think the tooltip he built is just masterful. I mean, that tooltip could be a report in and of itself.
So how did you actually build a line chart where the color changes as it goes higher?
It's in the Charticulator. It's not in the native visual. It's not available in native visual.
Wow. So
yeah,
Greg's actually writing a private message here, because his audio isn't working, that you actually used 19 report pages, but it all summarized up to one page.
Yeah.
Amazing. And is that because of all the tooltips, etc.?
Yeah. And this chart was also created in the Charticulator. The chart just next to the line chart.
Yep.
Where I'm showing the season. So it was also created in the Charticulator.
Wow. Amazing. It's amazing. It's almost frustrating that you can't showcase all the value you've got into this report, because if you just can't see all the tooltips, etc. if you take an image of it. So if you're trying to represent in like an image, like a showcase or something, you can only see one, like the front end image, but you can't see all the amazing other tooltip images in the background that add so much value to the actual insights that you can get out of the report.
Exactly.
But it is amazing how you're able to summarize so many just like interesting insights. And I presume that if I click this filter button up the top, it's going to take me back to the original look.
No, it just resets the data on the report.
Yeah, it resets everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. My computer's just running a little bit slow. But again, really easy and simple navigation that gets you back to stage one, I presume.
Yeah. And how would you know that you are on a particular page? There is another trick I used. For example, if you are browsing the report by dates, you can see the numbers shown on the dates are totally white, right? So it's a brown color I have used, and others I grayed out, so the user would know that we are on this particular page.
Right. Awesome. Now let's jump into this one, because this was a slightly unique visualization here, because you've actually gone and done some. Have you used R here? Some advanced analytics around how each country is actually performing relative to their predicted outcomes. So this model explains over 60% of the variance in global COVID deaths of the 153 countries. 65 performed better than predicted, while 88 performed worse than predicted. So do you want to run through this a little bit? I'm interested to see how you went about it.
Yeah. So what we did on this one, we did build this out in R, and I can show you if I can share screen on this.
I'll switch over to you, Ryan.
So what we did is we built out. So this looks kind of daunting. It's really not, and I'm very much looking forward to putting forward that course that I'm going to be doing this spring or summer, in terms of showing kind of, in a sense, how simple you can make this. In that, basically what you do is this just builds out the model, so that we have these predicted deaths. We read in the CSV file. Now in this case, I read in a CSV to build it out in RStudio, but I'll show you what we do later on, that we basically build that out in Power Query. And what this does is this fit is just a log linear model. So we say the log of total deaths is the log of population, income, the number of neighbors. So we wanted to take account of the fact that, like, you've got an island nation like Australia or New Zealand, and that, a country like China with 17 neighbors has a much different problem, and you want to account for that in the prediction. We wanted to account for how democratic a country was, in terms of thinking theoretically that the more authoritarian they are, the more you can just impose restrictions unilaterally.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought the authoritarian regimes would get the highest scores?
And it is true that your deaths and your bad outcomes do go up, as a function of how democratic your society is, all other things being equal. Because we also factored in corruption.
Except for New Zealand.
And this kind of gets to the analysis that didn't make it into the report, because we wanted to say, okay, you may be authoritarian, but a corrupt regime is probably going to be misreporting their numbers, and so taking that into account as well. And so we corruption, democratic, number of neighbors, income, population. We looked at population density. It turns out that the model, because of the collinearity with income, with income and population, the model actually gets worse when you include that. So we did some basic specification testing, not nearly as much as we would have done if we'd had more time. But basically, what the R code does here is it calculates that model. It then calculates the predicted observations. So given for each country all of their independent variables, what is their predicted number of deaths in this case? And then the residual, which is what is their actual minus predicted. So in this case, the more you were above predicted, the worse your outcomes were. And this was the way we felt we could kind of fairly judge countries against each other, which was to say not just, how many deaths does China have versus New Zealand, but saying how many was China predicted to have, and how did they do relative to their prediction versus how well did New Zealand do relative to their prediction. And it puts everybody on kind of a common basis on which you can then relatively judge. And so we did some summary statistics here, and then output the results into what's called a data frame, which in R is basically just a table. And what I can show you real quick is there's kind of a magic thing that we're gonna present and talk to folks about, which is a way to get R to run without learning a whole lot of R. In that, what you can do is you can run R right within Power Query, and so you can do all of your data prep, which normally is something that takes a long time to learn in R, about how to do data prep within R. And you can see what I did here is I did filtering, I did grouping, merging, more filtering, renaming, changing types, more filtering, and then what it has this kind of magic command called data set, which is data set just takes everything that's happened in the query up to that point of running the R script and takes all these steps, says, give me the outcome of all of that processing and run that through the R script. And then take the output of that R script and then run that back into Power Query. So the whole R script just becomes basically one step within Power Query. And then you export that out and then do your remaining analysis. And so what you get is you get the ability to plot your data, not from R, but in this case, this is just a standard Power BI scatter plot. But what we've done is we've processed the data and come up with these residuals from R and then just drop them into, so if you look here, you'll see it's just the standard scatter plot. And then we've just dropped the predicted onto the x-axis and the residual onto the y. So it really is a way to do some very sophisticated analysis with, as you saw, just about 6 lines of code.
Wow. And so with R, just so you know, I'm not everyone's across exactly how R works. So basically, you're inputting these parameters, and then you are getting basically a new table output based on all the all the different variations of results that you could get with the parameters that you've input. Is that
Exactly
how it operates? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you take Power Query.
You're creating data. You're creating new data sets with your R code.
Yeah, I mean, basically, in some sense, what you can think about it is almost like what you would do in M code or DAX. So you take data input, do some analytics on it, and then put it back out into a visualization. So all we're doing here is really just taking from Power Query, and instead of creating like a custom M function, we just create a custom R function and kind of route the data from Power Query through that function and then back to Power Query. And
right.
so it's kind of a minor detour, but really, taking advantage of all the stuff we already know how to do.
Right. Amazing. So, and then how did you create these visualizations? Well, not these visualizations, these sort of sliders, where you were able to change the results just by sliding along here, and it sort of changed the way the visualization looked. Like, how does that work? Because I think that's cool. I mean, it's really interesting. Like, just a simple way to be able to drill into or see, a specific amount of information.
Jared, do you want to take that one? You've done a lot of instruction on that one recently.
I didn't do that, but I believe that was just done with the new feature that Power BI released, I believe in November or December. I think it was November. Is the zoom sliders?
Okay, so these are just out of the box zoom sliders with the scatter graphs or scatter plots.
Yep, that's all you did is just add that on top of the visual there in the visualizations pane there, and put those zoom sliders in there, and you can definitely helps you zoom in on the data.
Cool, that's nice. And you've also got another. See, someone's put. So you would put a custom image in here, and does this bring up like a tooltip or something? Oh, what is this one?
You can click on it. It's a bookmark, and Brian knows what it is.
So that's the there you go. That's the detailed statistical results.
Woo.
So for the folks who really want to delve into the R output and look at the significance of coefficients and the F statistics and the p-values, it's all right there.
I love it. I mean, I don't know exactly what it means, but it looks really nice. And so to really create this is just a tooltip that in a sort of a hidden page with like an image. Is that basically all that's feeding through here?
Yeah, we basically just took the R output and popped it into PowerPoint and did a little bit of cleanup on it, and then just snapped it as an image in Snagit and put that in as a bookmark. So we kind of have it as a kind of a subtle hide on this because we figured that most folks are not going to be interested. So we didn't want to take up significant real estate with it. And so it's one of those things that it's there if you feel inclined to explore it, but it's easily ignorable if it's not something of interest.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I think the additional imagery is works well. It actually works. It works pretty well. You don't have to insert like every minor detail into your report. You can just make it appear intuitively if someone is interested in that. I like you got a lot of that added value sort of packed in behind the scenes, and I think that really works well. Now, okay, so we're getting to the end here, and we've gone over a lot of really interesting things. What I want to maybe just dive into next is, so you've decided to collaborate, you've gone in and cleaned the data, you've worked out what story you wanted to tell. How did you go about as a team putting the finishing touches on things? Because I'm sure everyone had their opinion on what should their final opinion on how this should look and how this should operate. So how did you go about as a collective executing on that?
My opinion was that Greg and Mudasir were way better at it than I was, and I just deferred to them.
Yeah, so you just deferred to the experts. Okay. So what about sort of towards, what about like iterating at the end? Because, the great thing with Power BI, as we know, is that you can continue to iterate. There's, you don't just, there's no like sort of end game. You can always find improvements. You can always think of additional things that you can add. So how did that final iteration work? Was it just Mudasir and Greg created a visualization, sent you guys an image, and then you said, "Yep, that looks great," or we should do this? Like what are some of the and why I'm asking this is because I think this is a big part of like how you would do how do you do this in an organization? Because you've got so many people with opinions. You've got managers who want to see it one way. You believe it should be another way. So like how do you really finish off these reports, and then how do you do it? How do you do it practically? What tool? How is the communication and collaboration working?
Oh, I think yeah. Go ahead, Jerry.
You go. No, you go. Sorry.
Yeah, we were already going back and forth in the reports. So if we disagreed on anything, we talked about it and made the changes. So in the end, everybody saw the report, and I don't think that anybody had any idea to change anything, right? Except we changed the COVID-19 heading. We tried to include the gradient color. In the end, we decided to just not include it because it was looking very colorful. So we just decided to go with one color on the heading. Apart from that, during the time when we were creating the report, we had some calculation errors also. So team members corrected us, and it was just a gradual process, not that something unusual or special we did in the end.
Right.
I think there was also a sense you get to a point of kind of declining marginal returns that, there's a point at which tinkering really improves things. And then you get to a point where you could keep tinkering with it for days, and it really doesn't have much of an impact. And, Greg is always super disciplined about this in his reports, that he allocates a certain amount of time for that and basically calls pencils down at the end of that time. And I think it's a real smart recognition that, you can make this a never ending process, but that there's really at some point kind of little benefit to continuing to tinker, unless you're doing user testing, that you've kind of wrung all the expertise out of the team you've got, and it's time to just move it forward. And we were actually pretty close to running out of time. We wanted some time to put the report itself together. Greg,
cool. One of the things I wanted to just dive into here was in the Analyst Hub, and sort of my vision and why I sort of went down that rabbit hole, sort of my vision for how I think you can do this quite effectively in the Analyst Hub. So I presume, someone would go create a visualization. They might create an image, and then they might put that in the chat, or they might put that somewhere so others can comment on it. So my vision of how I think we could do this in the Analyst Hub, and this is only really possible with some of our latest updates now, is that say you're in a team, right? You're in your team. I'm in my enterprise DNA devs team here, and then I'm in my projects. Now, what I think you could do, and this is great for version control as well, is that every time someone makes an update or something meaningful is done to the report, you can create an image of it, and then come into the App Center and use the Power BI Portfolio app, add the picture of that version, and then go. So you could go like COVID data, version 15 or something like that, and then you could save this as your team document, put it inside the specific project, and then you would have, you would be able to see the progression of your report as you work through it. And then I sort of did this the other day as a bit of a test, and then you can actually click into it and leave comments, etc. And discuss. The idea is that you can discuss it within the Analyst Hub. The one missing piece we have is I do believe that this is a great way to go, and will be great for organizations, is that we really need to improve, and this being very honest here about some of the gaps here with the Analyst Hub. We need to improve the notification and communication area of the application, so that when someone leaves a comment within a particular document, you get notified straight away that a comment has been made, or that sort of this particular project has just had a document saved, COVID-19 version 15. You get notified. You can come in and quickly navigate to that document and add comments yourself. I think that is being able to log all that communication within specific projects, within specific teams, I think is going to really optimize the sort of iterating as you sort of work through a Power BI report. What do you guys think about that conceptually?
Yeah, I think that's an enormously helpful feature.
Yeah.
As Greg talked about, and I really wish we could have gotten audio, because he's got a really great point about versioning, and that the more wide open your scope is, the harder it is to decide when you're finished. And so I can tell, for challenge 12, I think that's going to be a major problem in terms of, the scope is tell us interesting things about our data. Mm-hmm. And there, it's a data set with, I think, 110 columns. So the interesting things you can say about it are almost unlimited. And I think we're really going to have to work with that kind of versioning system to decide what goes in and what goes out. And Greg just said, where do you stop? And I think kind of documenting what we've done on each version and being able to kind of go back almost like a film edit and put those kind of out on a virtual table and say, okay, these two we keep, this one we drop, this one we're not sure about. I think is going to be enormously helpful.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and then that's exactly all of those pieces of the puzzle around developing collectively a Power BI report. That is ultimately what we're trying to do with the various different apps that we have in the Analyst Hub, is that you can go from planning, all the various like idea generation, sort of planning out your data pipelines, because you might have data coming in from multiple sources. You can even plan out your data model. You can then prioritize what you think each person should focus on, and you can take this in many different ways. But to tie it all back, we want to make sure that if everyone's leaving comments on other people's documents within your team or within your project, that you get notified immediately. So it becomes a lot more collaborative, a lot more real time. So there's no lag between, you're not having to use another system to sort of say, hey, I just updated this in the Analyst Hub. Go check it out and leave a comment. It's kind of like got to be a bit more immersive, and that is the direction that we're looking to go. The other simple app that we're going to add here as well, which I think will be really valuable, is a data model portfolio. So it's going to be very similar to the Power BI portfolio, really, really similar. Basically, it's just going to enable you to do version control of your models as well, by taking image of a model in one state, and then if you go and make a change, you can just catalog or document what the new version is of your data model. And I think that's a good one as well, because I think that can really cause issues, is that if you're collaborating and others are changing around the data model as they work through things, and others don't realize that, there is actually no way in Power BI, from what I understand, to even know if someone's changed the model. That's going to be a way that you can document that and sort of get visibility over what others are doing with your models.
Yeah.
So Greg's got a point, and he's just written a note. Would love to issue the director's cut, but actually have an inverse situation. Power BI 1 wants to deliver whatever has been found. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm not 100%. Maybe I'm not getting that exactly, Greg, but I think what you're trying to say is that most people want to deliver the finished product rather than how they're working through it stage by stage. But I think, when you're working collaboratively, that is a bit more difficult, right? Because you've got to sort of show where everyone's at a particular point in time. So someone can pick up where you sort of left off.
You almost kind of got to set up role specific before you get started, and then, just have the others critique once you come up with something. I think that's something else that people probably need to pick up on is definitely have your roles set up before you get into this too, because it could get messy.
Yep. Nice. Okay. Any final thoughts, everyone? Super discussion today. Really enjoyed learning about how you went about it, and then also just some of the specifics, because and to hear that there was actually 19 pages in that report is pretty incredible. 19 pages all sort of rolled up into one compelling visual. It's just amazing, really, what you can do with Power BI these days. I mean, it's just phenomenal. I mean, you didn't even used to be able to hide pages. I mean, that was only like the last 12 to 18 months, I think.
One thing, Sam.
As well.
Oh, go ahead.
Greg's just said 19 pages and 30 versions. So that, to me, that is actually not, if you were just in an organization, I mean, that doesn't surprise me. Like, because that's what would happen when you're working with an organization, or even if you're like a consultant working with a client, that's how long it sometimes takes to actually get to a finished product.
It's like a product. When you're developing a product, you have many prototypes until you all agree on the final one.
Yeah.
So it was like that, yeah.
And I think that what I've also feel from this experience and from learning from you all is that we need to form a new sort of framework, like around analytics ops or some sort of catchy name that we should copyright at Enterprise DNA, and base it on your experiences of actually doing this, because to me this is new stuff. Like, everyone's just trying to work this out, and if we can continue to build on a framework and also deliver the tooling that can actually make it work through the Analyst Hub, I think that's super exciting.
Jared
I would really go ahead, Mudassir.
Jared is good at inventing creative names like JMap, so this tag will be given to Jared, right?
Yep, nice. I'm pretty good at creating the memes as well. Yep.
Yeah, okay. We'll leave that one to you.
One of the things I really want to encourage is for folks to give this a try. If you've been participating in the challenge and you see somebody who's got a style that you like but that's different from your own, shoot them a message and see if they want to team up and give it a go, because I think you'll find it to be a really both an enjoyable experience and one that really teaches you a lot. I learned a ton from kind of seeing these guys work on a day-to-day and hour-by-hour basis, and there was a lot of camaraderie. There was a lot of jokes going back and forth, but there was also a lot that I think each of us learned from each other. And, I think that opportunity is open to everybody. There's no, there's no bounds in the challenges on doing this. And, really encourage folks to give it a try. I think you'll find there are some challenges to it, but that the rewards more than outweigh the challenges.
That's great. And I think having time zone really helped, because we didn't have to wait for any other member because of the time difference.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to collaborate at the same time without any difficulty.
Nice. Yeah, I think that makes a big difference. I know from experience, working in different time zones is a little bit more difficult, because actually the people I have, my team actually building the Analyst Hub are based in Europe, which is sort of a totally opposite to my time zone. So it can be a struggle sometimes, but the ways that we do get around it is that we don't actually have that many meetings, but we do just just short videos that we send to each other. And so it can be done. It can be done. It's not like you can't do it. And if I actually, and you find this a lot in organizations, like the waiting around of like booking meetings and getting to meetings can sometimes be just takes so long. It's so inefficient. And I think they call it like asynchronous discussions, where you're just actually creating videos to each other. It's like this is significant trend that's happening online at the moment, especially as everyone's going virtual. And that's what we do. We use this technology called Loom, and you just can create like 5-minute videos, less than 5-minute videos for anything that you want to discuss, and we just send them back and forth to each other. So it can be done. And I think that would be, if there was a way for us to create that inside the communication aspect of Analyst Hub, I think that would be epic as well. And might not be on the first iteration of what we do there around the communication side of things, but something that I would definitely want to explore down the line.
I think Analyst Hub, because we define roles and we set up the roles in Excel sheet, so we can define the roles in Analytics Planner. And this challenge we are struggling with to come up with some sort of a story. So it would really help to do this planning in Analyst Hub. I think so.
Yeah, I've become like, I historically I wasn't a huge planner per se, but when you're working within an organization, you want to have a bit of a plan. You want to have a bit of a strategy. You want to make sure that you're sort of you're getting some foundations right within your teams, within your business functions. Like you're creating the right workspaces. You're sort of outlining what reports you should focus on. You're prioritizing the reports that will have the biggest impact. Those sort of things are to me are becoming just as important as the actual development. So that you can actually get the most value out of what you're doing from an analytical perspective within your teams and organizations. And so, that was the whole sort of idea and concept behind the Analyst Hub. And we've only really got it to where I'm like happy with it, in the last month or so, just with all these additional features. And I think some of the other things we've got planned is going to add to it even more and be super, super valuable in not only the planning, but also the execution of how you go about developing analytics reports with Power BI specifically.
And I think this is not just with Power BI, because when I created Excel dashboards in Excel, so I was the sole developer, and I don't think so that anybody has collaborated while creating dashboards in Excel too. So I think this would help also in other products.
Yeah. Hey, and on Excel, actually, did you see the announcement at Ignite recently in the last week or so that you're going to be able to feed Excel reports or Excel dashboards into Power BI? Did you see that?
Yep.
No. Okay.
Yeah, I was. It is actually amazing. It seems like this. Yeah. I mean, as we know, like still a lot of users are stuck in Excel and still love Excel, which is fine. But Power BI is and I think I noticed this a long time ago. It's the sort of tip of the spear. It's the central analytical portal, and it seems like Microsoft are bringing in more and more to it. So so I think it's going to be huge. And also the integration into Microsoft Teams is getting more and more tight, which is going to be amazing as well. That data immersion is just going to be huge, absolutely huge. Anyway, a bit off topic, but interesting nonetheless. Maybe that's for another video on the channel. Okay, I think we'll wrap up. I think we've gone on long enough. Any very final thoughts before we say goodbye?
I think we hit it from my end.
Yeah, I mean, my last thought is that this session was awesome. I mean, just the fact that we can all get together, discuss, the fact that you've actually collaborated on a report, but then we can all get together and collaborate on the discussion around the report, I think is truly valuable. And I really hope to do more. It's easy for us to just talk about things that we're really interested in and things that we know make a huge difference. So really appreciate you guys all getting on board.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's wrap up. Thank you all. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you all.
See you later.